Again today the Gemara on Daf Yud Ches Samad Aleph, about 8 or 9 lines down from the top of the Yamud, where it says Omar Rava. Okay, the Gemara here is discussing the halachas of a nida, the forbidden relation of one with his wife when she's in a state of nida, and there are two isurim that are involved there. And the lashon of the Gemara, there's the knisa and there's the prisha, when the person enters and when the person comes out. And what the Gemara is discussing is that if a person finds out during the time of relations that his wife is a nida, so then he has to separate, but he has to separate when the Eiver, in the lashon of the Gemara, when the Eiver is mace. There's the Eiver chai and Eiver is mace, if it's hard or not. If the person separates when the Eiver is chai, so then he's Eiver on a Isser of nida, just like in the knisa, when he enters, when his wife is a nida, the same also in the prisha. He has to wait until the Eiver is mace, and then he can come out. Okay, so the Gemara brings now here a discussion about this, and first, the source of this in the Mishnah is in Masechta Nida. Sagt the Gemara, Omar Rava, so Rava said, V'tarvayu, both of these points that we discussed, which are forbidden, Taninu, we learned them in a Mishnah. Knisa Tanina, the Isser of the Nida regarding Knisa coming in, is a Mishnah, and also Perisha, the Isser of the Nida coming out when the Eiver is still Chai, is also a Mishnah. Perisha Tanina, so first the Gemara brings the Mishnah regarding Perisha coming out, because that's very clear. The Mishnah says, Diktani, Hoya Mishamish Matahira, the person was having relations with his wife, which is not a Nida, she's Tahira, Va'amralai, and she tells him, Nitmeisi, that she senses that she's a Nida and she's Tomei now, Upirish miyad, and he separates immediately. Chayev, he'll be chayev for the prisha because he didn't wait until the Eiver is mace. Kenisa, regarding the iser of the nida, when he enters tanine. So the Mishnah also mentions this. This is over there also in nida, a Mishnah before. It says nimtza al shaloi, in a case where a person had relations with his wife, and then when he wipes himself, he sees that there's blood. He sees, this is the husband observes this. So then, Tamein, both, the wife and him will both be Tamei, because she's Tamei, she's a Nida, and he that had relations with a Nida will also be Tamei, and V'chayavim be'karbon. They're both going to be chayav on a carbon for having relations with a Nida b'sheigig, that you chayav to bring a carbon for this. Okay, so this is the case over here, Nimtza Shaloi. We'll see that Rashi later explains this. The chiddush here is that if it's he that finds the blood, then even if he observed this and found the blood, not right away after, even if it's later on, but the fact that he sees blood, we know for a fact that he had relations with a wife that was a nida, and therefore he'll have to bring a carbon. Okay, so what is this case talking about here? That it says that he's chayav a carbon for what? So my love, don't you think that the case here is b'samoch levesta, that he had relations with his wife in that time when her cycle, when her vest, when she gets her period. And he should have been careful. He said to himself that he can do it in an oifen that she will not be a nida. But then it happened that he had relations with a nida. So therefore, he can't say that this is an oinus, that this happened unexpectedly, because it wasn't the time of her vest. So therefore he's a shaykhi, because he thought that he can do it in the oifen that she would not be a nida, and therefore he's going to be va'knisa. He's chayiv for the fact that he had relations with her when he entered. That's the chayiv of the carbon that this Mishnah is speaking about. Oh, Rav Ada bar Masna l'Rove. So Rav Ada bar Masna tells Rove the way he teaches this Mishnah, that this Mishnah is speaking about the chayiv of the carbon for the knisa. Maybe the pshat in the Mishnah is different. Really, I can tell you that the case here is b'shaloi samach levesta, that he had relations with his wife in a time when it was not the cycle that he was expecting that she would be a nida. And so therefore, when he entered and she was a nida, he's not chai for that. It would be an oinus, because he didn't expect it at all. The aprisha. And here what the Mishnah is speaking about is, it's saying that now, after he had relations with her, and during the relations his wife says that I became tomei, and he was supposed to wait until the Eiver is mace before he leaves, and he left right away, it's on the Prisha that he's chayiv the carbon. That's what this Mishnah is speaking about. Now, if you'll argue and say, if that's the case, that this Mishnah is telling you the chiyuv of the carbon for the prisha, it's about prisha lamali. Why does this Mishnah have to teach this halacha that it's chayav the carbon for leaving after he finds out that his wife is a nida? But hatanale. That's another Mishnah that we just quoted. There it clearly says that he was mishamishim at the hayra, and his wife tells him that she's tamei, that he has to wait before he leaves. So why would the Mishnah have to say it again? So on that, Rav Ada Bar Masna says, I can answer you and explain, because this Mishnah here is really coming to teach another halacha that follows after what we quoted before, where the Mishnah goes on to say, Nimtzal Shalah, if after he's separated from his wife, so what happens? She goes and wipes herself, and then what she observes, she finds that there's blood here. So now in such a case, Tmeim B'Safik, now there's going to be a tumah of the husband and the wife, but only Misafik. Because what it's speaking about over here is, well, if she wipes herself immediately after and she sees blood, so you know that she became a nidda during the relations, in that case, then they're going to be definitely tamei and definitely chayiv in a carbon. But over here, in the case where she wipes herself later on, so now you don't know the blood that she sees, when did she become a nidda? Was she a nidda in the time when they were together, or was she a nidda only afterwards? So in such a case, it's a suffix, and therefore pturim min a carbon. They'll be parted from a carbon. So that's the point that this Mishnah is coming to say. It's coming to say this halacha to make a distinction between if he's the one that observed the blood or she. So va'aydi, the boy, the Mishnah, nimtzal shalah, it wanted to come and teach this halacha regarding when she is the one that observed the blood afterwards. And here there's a difference if she observed it right away or she finds the blood later on. If she finds it later on, then it's only a suffix. So Tananami nimtzal shaloi. So it says before the halacha, in the case where he's the one that observed the blood when he wiped himself, and by him, it makes no difference if it was b'shas ma'aser right away or later on. If he finds blood, where did the blood come from? He knows that it comes from his wife, and therefore she must have been a nidda b'shas ma'aser, and therefore definitely will be chayav a carbon. So therefore, Rav Ada is asking, we could say that this Mishnah as well is speaking about the chiyuv on a nida regarding the prisha, not regarding the knisa, as Rava wanted to say. But on this, Ravina asks Rav Ada on his pshat in this Mishnah, Mi motzis lo'ikme lahahi b'shaloi samach levesta. Is it possible to explain that this Mishnah is speaking about a case where a person had relations with his wife in a time when she wasn't expected to be a nida at all? And therefore, for entering there, it's a aynis and he's not chayiv a carbon. Va'aprisha, and he's only chayiv for this that he's separated from her. And then he should have waited because he knew that he found out b'shas ma'aser that she's a nida. How could you say that that's the case? V'hanimtza katani. The lashon that this Mishnah here says is nimtzal shaloi or nimtzal shalah, which means that this is something that was only discovered later on after he's separated from his wife. So v'nimtza lebasa achimashma. Nimtza means that he only discovers this after he separates from her. If, like Rav Ada tried to explain this Mishnah, that it's speaking about a case where a person is together with his wife and b'shas ma'aser she tells him that she's tamei, and now because he finds out that she's tamei, he's supposed to wait. And he did, and wait, and therefore he's chayav to bring a carbon for being pirish when the aver is still chai. So me'ikare ki pirish le, me'ikare havi le yediyah. Second word me'ikare here seems to be extra. So from the beginning, when he separated from her, he already knew from before that she's a nida. She told him b'shas ma'aser that she's a nida. So why is the Mishnah saying the term of nimtzal shaloi or nimtzal shalah that he only discovered this later? So therefore, this lashon of the Mishnah is mashma that we're not talking about a situation which is negeya to the perisha because the person found out b'shas ma'aser. Elamai, we're talking about the knisa, something that the person did not know by the knisa that he entered b'shas the vest, and he should have known that this is a time that his wife could become a nida, and then when he comes out, he discovers that she was a nida. That's why it says the term nimtza, that he only found this out later. So therefore we go back to the pshat that Rava suggested before, that this Mishnah is speaking about the chiyuv of the nida b'negei to the knisa, not b'negei to the prisha. Amalei Rava, so Rava says to Rav Ada that questioned his pshat in the Mishnah, Tzayis, my dekama Rabbach. Listen to the pshat that your Rebbe, which was Ravina, told you. That's which is supporting the pshat that Rabbi said. Amalei, but Ravada still argued back, and Ravada said, Heichi motzis. How could I listen to his pshat? Or another gersa here is Heichi atzis. How should I listen to his pshat? Because the Tanya Allah in a Braise we learned on this Mishnah, explaining this Mishnah that Zu hi mitzvah sasei shebenida. What's being taught in this Mishnah is the mitzvah sasei of the nida shechayav and aleh, that you chayiv for this. Now, so he explains what his question is. If the pshat that Rabbi says is true, that this Mishnah is coming to explain the chiyuv of a nida for entering, for the relation in the beginning when she was a nida, you should have been more careful. Mitzvahs loisasehi. For that, there's only a mitzvahs loisase, that a person should not have relations with his wife that's a nida. As the Gemara will soon bring, that regarding the knisa, meaning a person that he has to be careful not to have relations with his wife that's a nida, and which includes to be careful not to have relations with her in a time period which she could become a nida, and that is allowed. As Gemara soon will quote. But regarding the other Isser, which is the Perisha, when he's already with her, to be careful when he leaves, that he shouldn't leave with the Eivra Chai, for that there's also a mitzvah saseh. So in this Braise, where it says on this Mishnah, that this case is the case of the mitzvah saseh of the nida, so if so, we see that it's talking about the din of the Perisha, not the din of the Knisa, like Rava wanted to say. So Amalei, Rava answers back, I Tanisa, if you learn such a Braise where it says that this Mishnah is speaking about the mitzvah saseh of the nida, so it's a mistake. Chaser v'tani hachi. You have to say that the words of the Braise are missing, and you should teach the Braise as follows: that zuhi mitzvahs loisesa shebenida shechayav and aleh. That the case that the Mishnah is speaking about is actually the loisesa of the nida, where the person entered in a time when there was the vest of his wife, and he should have been careful, and he's chayav for the knisa, for the relation in the beginning. And then another case, the other case of the Mishnah is that if he's mishamish with his wife that in the beginning was tahira, and then and she tells him b'shas ma'aseh that she's tamei upirish miyad, and he separates immediately, chayiv, then he'll be chayiv for separating immediately, and zui mitzvah saseh shebinidacholo. It's that case which is only, or not only, it's a mitzvah saseh. The Gemara will soon actually bring that regarding this case there's an eseh and a lois eseh, both, because if you chayiv a korban chatos for it, it has to be a lois eseh as well. So in that case, it's a mitzvah saseh and a lois eseh. Okay, so the Gemara now goes back to the lashon that it said over here that in the case where a person hears from his wife during the relations that she's tamei, so he should not separate immediately. So what does the person do? So the master has said, Pirish miyad, if he separates immediately, then chayiv. He'll be chayiv a korban chatas for this. So hey chiyavit, what is he supposed to do? Amar Rav Huna mishmei de Rave. So Rav Huna says in the name of Rave, or in the name of Rav. Rav Huna was a student of Rav. Noyitz eset zipornov bekarka. He sticks his 10 fingernails into the ground. Until the Aver is not going to be chai anymore, until it's dead, and then v'tuve. That's good for him. That's the right thing for him, that he doesn't continue having any hana whatsoever from a wife that's a nida, and only then could he separate. Okay, so now we see over here this halacha that everybody agrees to, and this is, so Gemara will soon bring the sources in the pasuk for this, that when a person is peidish, when he finds out his wife is a nida, he has to dafka be peidish when the aver is mace. So here the Gemara is going to bring a machlokes, two different interpretations on how we are to understand this. So Rave says, Zoyse meres. From this halacha regarding the nida, that he has to be peidish, he has to wait till the aver is mace, we could learn from here in general regarding all arayis, that ameshamish mace ba'arayis potter. Anyone that has relations with any of the yisurim of the arayis and the aver is mace, then he's potter. The whole entire act of relations that is by any of the arayis is only when the aver is chai. When it's mace, there is no isur b'chlal of arayis. It's not this act of bia of relations. Because the is lokadai to chayiv, if you're going to say that even if the aver is mace, a person is chayiv for any of the arayis, so hacha, my time of potter. Over here, if the person is leaving, is coming out when the aver is mace, why would he be potter? What does it say? That he should wait, and if he waited and the aver is mace, then he'll be potter. But why would he be potter? if it's also part of the act that is considered to be a relation with someone that's aser, with a erva, and in this case a nida, which is aser. So what are you going to say? The reason that he's potter, if the aver is meis, mishum da onesu, that it is considered to be an act of relations, which is aser, but in this case he's an einus. Because we're talking about a person that is having relations with his wife in a time where he didn't expect her to be a nida. It was not b'shas vesta. And then b'shas maisa, he finds out that she's a nida. So now it's an einus. So of course if he's going to leave, then he's going to be potter because it's an einus. But if that's the reason, if you're going to say that really there's no difference if the aver is chai or the aver is meis, the reason why he's potter when he leaves is because it's an einus. So if so, kipirish miyad, nami nifter. So if he leaves immediately, should also be potter. Why? Because honestly, for the same reason that he's an einus. If you're telling me that there's no difference in the condition of the person, if the aver is chai or the aver is meis, and the act of relations by all arayos is the same, it is considered to be an act of forbidden relations. So then he could separate immediately, and he'll be potter also for the same reason that it's an einus. Elamai, you must say that no, that there is a difference. If the aver is chai, so then this is an act of relations, and therefore he's going to be chayiv if he separates. If the aver is meis, it's not that maisa of bia of relations, and therefore he's going to be potter. But it has nothing to do with it's not because of the einus. That's the way Rav understands this. Now, Amalei Abaye, on this Abaye says, Loila mei malach. Really, I can tell you the pshat in this is different. Hamishamish meis ba'arayis chayiv. When anyone has any of the forbidden relations with any of the arayis, even if the aver is meis, he's still going to be chayiv. Now, my time potter over here, when we say that when a person was with his wife and nida, and then he leaves in the time when the aver is meis, that only then will he be potter, and not if the aver is still chai. What's the reason? Mishum da onusu. The reason actually is because it's an einus. Now, so another question Rava asked on that is that if so, kiparish miyad amay chai. If the point is that it's an einus, but really whether the aver is chai or meis, it's both an act of forbidden relations. So then why can't he separate immediately? So the answer is because because he should separate in the time when the aver is meis, when there's less hana, or pirish bahana merubah, and he separates in the time when the aver is chai, when there's more hana. So basically the point that Abai is saying is, either way, you could say that no, really either way, whether the aver is chai, whether the aver is meis, this is an act of forbidden relations. And therefore, what the person is supposed to do in such a situation is, he's supposed to go out in the least hana possible way. So they're both considered to be a maisa of Isser. But there is an einus here, though. So what do you do in a situation of an einus? In the situation of an einus, the person has to minimize and leave in the way that will have the least in the act of this Isser of the hana possible. And that's why we say that he has to wait and leave when the aver is meis. But be'etzem, what Abai is saying is, whether the aver is chai or the aver is meis, it's both a maisa of a bia. And therefore by other arayas, even with the aver meis, it's considered to be a Isser of arayas. So now the Gemara asks on this, so Rabbi Bar Chonon asks on Abaye the way Abaye understands this concept. Because Im Kain, if that's what you're explaining, with the distinction between the Ever Chai and Ever Meis, if so, Matzinu Arucha Uktsara Benida. So we have the concept of the long way and the short way that could be applied to a Nida, similar to what it says regarding a person that becomes Tameh inside the Beis HaMikdash. And the Tan and the Mishnah makes a distinction between leaving in a longer way or leaving in a shorter way, only regarding a person that's Tameh in the Beis HaMikdash. What is he asking? What's the kavanah of the question of the Gemara here? What he's saying is, what happens if a person becomes Tameh inside the Beis HaMikdash? So he's not allowed to remain there for an extra second. Right? So, but he's an einus. He became Tameh while he was inside. So what does he have to do? He has to leave the shortest way possible. If he leaves any route that's long, so then he's over on the Isser. Right? So over here, according to what Abai is saying, benegay to a person that has relations with his wife, and during the relations she becomes a nida. So you're saying that be'etzem, no matter how he leaves, the act of him leaving is all going to be part of the maisa of the bia of the forbidden relations. Elamai, he has to do it in the shortest way possible, or in the lashon that the Gemara said before, with the least hana possible. That's really the shorter way in this context, benegay to the nida. So if so, it comes out that the same exact concept that it says b'negei to tum in the Beis Hamikdash applies here also b'negei to a nida. So Taisus explains that this is a question only on Abaye and not on Rove, because according to Rove, it's b'chlal not the same in concept. According to Rove, when the person is peidish with the aver mace, so then it's b'chlal not an act of bia. It's not a chelik of the bia anymore. Once the aver is maced, there's no union of bia anymore. Mashenka, when the aver is chai, then it's a chelik of the bia. So there is no two ways of leaving, arucha or ktsara. One is a chelik of the bia and one is not. And according to Abaye that says whether the aver is chai, whether the aver is mace, it's both part of the act of the bia. Elamai, the difference is one is more hanal, one is less. So that's similar to the concept of the Beis Hamikdash, where the person is tamei inside and he has to leave. Elamai, he has to leave the quickest way possible. The same thing over here, that in either way, the aver chai or aver mace, it's still a chelik of the bia, but he has to leave in the least hanal possible. So the question that he's asking is, why did the Tana regarding Nida not make the same kind of distinction that it says regarding the person that's tamei in the Beis Hamikdash? So the Gemara answers, Elo, the answer for this is, or another girsa here is Omalei, that Abaye answered him, that the Tana doesn't want to say this because it doesn't want to cause confusion. Because Mishum Deleidomi, Arucha, you can't compare the expression of long root and short root in both cases. Because Arucha Dahacha, over here, if it's long, meaning the person waits, that's Ktsara Dahasa. That's compared to the person that's tamei in the Beis Hamikdash that takes the quickest route. Over there, when the person goes out the quickest way, that's the right way to leave when he's tamei in the Beis Hamikdash. Over here, when the person finds out that his wife is a nida and is tamei, over here, Adarabah, he has to wait. So here, the arucha is the right way to leave. And varucha dahasam, and when a person leaves by the Beis Hamikdash in the longer route, ktsara dahacha, that's considered to be over here the ktsara, meaning the shortest and the right way to leave with the least hana. So therefore, the Tana does not want to say that over here we have the same concept of arucha ktsara, in order not to confuse the one that would learn this Mishnah between the arucha ktsara by tumeh and the arucha ktsara over here by the nida. So the Gemara Maskefla, Rav Huna Bereida Rav Nosen, but Rav Huna Bereida Rav Nosen asks on this that we quoted here regarding what Abaye said. Omi Amar Abaye, is it true that Abaye said that onuso, that this person, whether it's a Eva Chai, whether it's a Eva Mace, either way, it's still part of the act of the Bia, of the relation, but the only difference is when he leaves, when the Eva is Chai, then he's having more anah. And when he's leaving Mace, so then it's an Einis, and that's the only reason he's Potter, because it's an Einis. But if that's how he's teaching this, Alme, what I see from this is, Bishaloi Samoch Levesta. That we're speaking over here about a person that the relations with his wife is in a time when she wasn't expected to be a nida, and therefore he's saying that she would be an einis, that he's an einis. That is, that when a man leaves at this time, when he waited, that he's an einis, and therefore he's potter. And that's only if it's b'shaloi samach levesta, because if it's a case that samach levesta, so then the person would be chayev both on the Knisa and on the Perisha, because he can't say that it's an Einus anymore. He should have been careful, knowing that his wife is in a time period that she could become a Nida, so then he should be chayev for everything. When Abaye over here is teaching this Mishnah that we're discussing, that when he leaves, then he waits. The Mishnah says he has to wait. And when he waits, he's going to be potter, and the reason he's potter is because he's an Einus. That means that he's teaching the Mishnah in a case where he had relations with his wife in a time when he wasn't expecting to go to be an Ida. And therefore, if he waits and leaves properly, then he'll be an Einus. That's how Abaye is teaching this Mishnah. So now what's the question on this? The question is, but Abaye, the Omar, Abaye is the one that said, and this goes back to a statement of Abaye that was at the end of Daf Yudzayin Amid Beis, where there Abaye and other Tanoim or other Amiroim as well said that Chayiv Shtayim, that in a case where a person is having relations with his wife Nida, and he leaves when the Eiver is still Chai, so Abaye said on the Mishnah, and Mishnah says that if he didn't wait, he'll be Chayiv, that the Pshat is that he'll be Chayiv twice. That's what the Mishnah is saying. So Alme, if he's chayiv twice, so that means how did Abaye teach this Mishnah? B'samech levesta askina. That we're speaking about a case where his wife was in a time where he should have expected her to be a nida, and therefore be chayiv twice because he's not an einus anymore. It's a shaygig. He should have known that she could become a nida, so he's chayiv on the knisa, and he's always also chayiv on the perisha. And the Gemara explained before, on the beginning of Yud Ches Amud Aleph, the Gemara, we learned before, the Gemara there explained how it's possible that you should be chayiv twice if it seemingly is all the Helam Echad. The Gemara there explained, but it's only possible to explain this if it's Samach Levesta. Then he's a shaygig on both, and he'll be chayiv twice. So here we have a stira in two statements that were quoted in the name of Abaye. Is this Mishnah talking about Samach Levesta or not Samach Levesta? So the Gemara answers, Ki itmer da Abaye ba'alme itmer. This statement that we said, that Abaye said, that for a nida, a person could be chayiv twice, that's not going on this Mishnah. He wasn't saying pshat in this Mishnah that he would be chayiv twice. Regarding the pshat of this Mishnah, it's talking about a case where the person had relations with his wife, not Samach Levesta. He didn't expect her to be a nida. So over here the Mishnah is saying that if he's pirish miyad, he'll be chayiv for the prisha, because he should have waited. And if he's not, if he did wait, so then he'll be potter because he's an einus. That's what Abaye said in Pshat in the Mishnah. The other statement of Abaye, where he said that this person could be chayiv twice, he didn't say it here on this Mishnah. That's a separate thing that Abaye said, that in a case where it was Samach Levesta, and the person expected that his wife could be a nida, over here he can't argue anymore that he's an einus. He's not an einus. He knows that this is the time his wife would be a nida, so then he'll be chayiv on the Knisa, and on the Prisha as well, even if he waited. He'll still be chayiv on the Prisha because he's not an einus. He should have known that his wife could be a nida on this time. So it's two different things. They're not both going on the Mishnah. So here the Gemara brings the source of the Isser, as mentioned, that there's the two Isurim of Knisa and Prisha. The Gemara said before, regarding the Prisha, it's a mitzvah saseh. So here the Gemara brings the source of this inyan. Ba'iminei, Rav Yonasan ben Yosi ben Lakunya, Mirab Shimon ben Yosi ben Lakunya. So he asked him, so it seems like this is, he's asking his brother about this, Azhara l'boyel nida minayin. What is the source in the Torah that it warns that you may not have relations with a wife or nida? So, minat Torah, where do you see this in the pasuk in the Torah? So he hears this shaila, shakal kala, pasuk bey. He took a piece of earth and he threw it at him. He asking such a question. Where does it say in the Torah the Isser to have relations with a wife or nida? Azhara l'boyel nida. It says in the pasuk, "Vel isha b'nidas tulmasa loisikrav." So it's a clear lav in the Torah. You can't be asking such a shaila. So Ella, rather his shaila was, going back to the point we were discussing before, Azhara l'mishamishim at-tahira. Where's the warning in the Torah for the case of a person that is having relations with a wife which was tahira, and va'amra lein etmeisi, and she tells him during this time that she became tameh, d'lei nifrish miyad, that he shouldn't separate immediately. So minala, that's the shaila over here. What's the source for this? So Alma Chizkiah says, Alma Kra, the pasuk says, V'tihi nidasa olav. The pasuk says that if a person is lashon of himshachav yishkav ish aisa v'tihi nidasa olav v'tamishav yamim. So when it says this lashon, it means a fila b'shas nidasa tehei olav. That even during the time when he was with her and she became a nida, that's when the isser on him the isser lies upon him that he should not separate immediately, but he should separate later. Or others tied to he olav means that he should remain with her. He should remain with her until the avid is mace, and only then should he separate. That's where you see so this pasuk is actually saying in the positive. This is a mitzvah saseh that he has to wait until to separate from her. So ashkechan aseh. This is the pasuk where it says the mitzvah saseh. Lo yisesem minala. Where do we see that for the prisha, when the aver is still high, that there's a lo yisesem for this as well? Amarav Pape, Amakra, the pasuk, the lav that we mentioned before regarding the knisa, that a person may not come and to have relations with his wife when she's an ida. So there it says leisikrav. So leisikrav simply means on the knisa, but it could also mean leisikrav nami leisifresh. It could be also don't come back to yourself, don't come close to yourself, meaning don't separate. Hudichsiv. That's what it means. That's what it means, because there's a pasuk that says. Again, leisifreshu. It means do not separate, to come back to yourself. The chsiv, because another pasuk says, ha'imrim, they say, this is in a pasuk in Yeshaya, they say to the Navi, kravi lecha, go back to yourself. Al tigash bi, don't come close to me, kikidashticha, because I will be mekadesh, which actually means I will make you tomei. So you see in this pasuk, the word krav means go back to yourself. So over here as well, when it says loisikrav, it means that he's with his wife, and it's saying loisikrav, do not go back to yourself. So therefore, this pasuk is also a lav on the Prisha. And another brayso we learned regarding a person being careful and knowing the time, the period of his wife, to be careful to be separate from her. The pasuk says, "V'yizartem es bnei Yisrael mitumasam." What is this pasuk teaching? Omar Rabbi Yeshia, the word v'yizartem means to separate. Rashi brings v'yizartem means like v'yinozru, when one separates. When is it saying that he should separate? So Rabbi Yeshia mikan azhar lebnei Yisrael. This is the source, the warning for Yidden nishiyifrishu min nishiseyen, that they have to separate from their wives samuch levestan in that time of their period. And the kama, how long does the person have to separate? Omar Rabbe or Rave, Aina. It's one period, a 12-hour period, whether daytime or nighttime. That period when the person expects his wife to be a nida, which is discussed in Masech Nida, we'll learn all the details of when there's the Aina, that a person has to separate the vest. So that's here we see the pasuk is saying that one should separate. So in simple pshat of the Gemara here, you see that this halacha of Prisha in the time of the Aina, this is a Isam and Atayra. As it says here, that's what the pasuk means, v'izartem. But other Rishonim say that this is Isam Rabbanan, and the pasuk that the Gemara brings is just an asmachta. And there's other Rishonim that say that the period of 12 hours, the whole day or the whole night, that's Isam Rabbanan. When I tell you the Isam would only be mamish if it's a time where the person knows that it's now mamish that she's becoming a nida. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai regarding this, that a person has to separate from his wife in this time period. That kol she'einoi pirish me'ishtay samach levesta, one that does not separate from his wife in this time, and then afila havyin leibanim, even if he has children and he has such good and great children that are kibnei Aaron, that are like the children of Aaron HaKayin, Mason, these children will die. Because the pasuk says, "V'izartem es bnei Yisrael mitumasam," that they should separate from their wives in this time when she could become tamei. And then, as it says afterwards, "V'hadova b'nidasa," that she becomes tamei with being a nida. This is at the end of Parshas Mitzayre. What's the parsha that follows after this? V'samach lei, and afterwards comes Parshas Achrei Mos, where it says Achrei Mos shnei bnei Aaron. That if a person is not careful with this, then the children will die. Now the Gemara says this also in the positive. One that's careful with this to stay away from his wife at the time of the vest, he will be zeichet to have children. The pasuk says to separate between Tomei and Toir, which the Gemara here is darshaning that it refers to this, that he separates from his wife at this time. It's not the simple pshat of the pasuk. It's the pasuk there where it talks about after Nadav and Avihu passed away, and says you shouldn't drink wine when you go into the Beis Hamikdash. Lahavdu ben Atomei ben Atoyer. But then the next parsha, after Parsha Shmini, v'samach lei isha chisazriya v'yolda zachar. So if a person separates, then he'll have sons, a zachar. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Yomar, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, having leibanim ruyin lahayres. Lahira, that is. He'll have children that will be able to learn Torah, and not only learn Torah, but they'll be able to teach and paskin halachas. The chsiv, as the pasuk says, lahavdil. You have to separate between Tomei and Torah. And then it also says in that pasuk, lahayres. Lahayres, it says, Lashon of the pasuk, lahayres, just a moment. And the next pasuk, right? The next pasuk says, lahayres is bnei Yisrael's kol hachukim. That is hinting to this, that he'll have a child that will teach Torah and paskin halachas. Amar Rabbi Barabba says another thing that you say this. Amar Rabbi Yochanan kol hamavdel ala yayin b'motzei Shabbos, one that makes havdalah on wine motzei Shabbos, havyin loy bonim scharim, will have children, sons. The pasuk says lahavdel ben hakodesh uben hachoil, and that pasuk it also says to separate between kodesh and choil. So the Gemara here is darshaning that this refers to making havdalah motzei Shabbos and on wine. There's any to make that the havdalah should be dafka on wine. Uksiv. And in another place, it also says lahavdil. Ksiv hasam, or it's pasuk of it says lahavdil ben atome ben atoir, and then that which is in Parshas Shmini. And in the samach lei isha kisazriya, the next parsha says isha kisazriya v'yolda zachar. As the Gemara darshan before, that this shows that he'll have a child a zachar. So it also goes on lahavdil ben hakodesh ben hachoil, making havdalah on wine. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Yomar, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says banim ru'uyin lahira. Making Avdallah will also give him children that will be zeiche, to children that will be meire, will teach Torah and paskin. The chsiv lahavdil ulahayris. As he said before, these two go together. Omer Rabin Yamin bar Yefes, Omer Abba Lazar, Kol HaMekadesh es atzmai, b'shas tashmish, that's the one that sanctifies himself at the time of relations. And there's different shatim in this. Rashi says derech tznius. Other Rishonim say it refers to the kavanah, that it's done l'shem shamayim with proper thoughts. Havin lei banim zacharim. You will have sons. Shenem, as the pasuk says, v'his kadishtem v'hisem kedoshim. This is in the end of Parshas Shmini, I believe. And then v'samach lei, right afterwards it says, Isha kisazriya and v'yolda zachar, that will have sons. And this is because of the kedusha of b'shas tashmish. Okay, we'll stop over here. The next Gemara goes in the next plot.